My name is Madison, I'm 26 years old, and I'll never forget the moment my father publicly humiliated me at my sister's wedding reception. There I was, watching him guide me away from our family table toward the back corner where the catering staff sat. 200 guests stared as he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear that I'd be more comfortable with the hired help. My cheeks burned with shame as whispers rippled through the elegant ballroom at Grandview Manor. My sister Emma glowed in her designer dress at the head table, pretending not to notice my degradation. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you're ready to hear how this humiliating moment became the turning point that changed everything, please hit that like button and subscribe for more dramatic family stories. Trust me, you won't believe what happened when the restaurant owner walked in and everything I thought I knew about my place in this family got turned completely upside down. Growing up, the favoritism in our household wasn't subtle. Emma, my younger sister by 2 years, could do absolutely no wrong in our father Harold's eyes. While I maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout high school and earned a full scholarship to business school, Dad barely acknowledged my achievements. Emma's C-average and constant party invitations received enthusiastic praise and financial rewards. When I graduated summa cum laude with my MBA in hospitality management, Dad missed the ceremony for Emma's community college art show where she displayed 3 mediocre paintings. The family construction business, Henderson and Sons, had been in our family for 3 generations. Despite my business education and genuine interest in operations, Dad made it crystal clear that Emma would inherit everything. Never mind that Emma showed zero interest in construction and spent most family business meetings scrolling through social media on her phone. Dad insisted she had natural leadership qualities while dismissing my strategic insights as overthinking. When I presented a detailed expansion plan that could have doubled company profits within 2 years, he filed it away without reading it and told me to focus on supporting Emma's vision. That's when I made the decision to forge my own path. I started at the bottom in hotel management, working double shifts and weekends to prove myself in an industry I was passionate about. Within 3 years, I'd climbed to restaurant manager at the prestigious Meridian Hotel downtown. My innovative cost reduction strategies and staff retention programs caught industry attention, earning recognition from the Regional Hospitality Association. Did my father attend the awards ceremony? Of course not. He was too busy planning Emma's birthday party. The irony wasn't lost on me that while I was actually building a successful career, Dad constantly criticized my choices. "You'll never amount to anything without family support," became his favorite refrain. He genuinely believed that abandoning the family business was the biggest mistake of my life, even as Emma showed up to company meetings hungover and made decisions based on Pinterest inspiration boards rather than market research. When Emma announced her engagement to Bradley Whitmore, son of a prominent real estate developer, Dad saw dollar signs and social climbing opportunities. Bradley's family moved in circles Dad desperately wanted to join, and Emma's wedding became his chance to showcase the Henderson family as successful and sophisticated. The fact that Bradley was actually a decent guy who treated Emma well seemed secondary to Dad's networking aspirations. Wedding planning began 18 months before the ceremony, and from day one, my role was clearly defined as unpaid labor rather than family member. While Emma and our stepmother Linda toured venues and tasted cakes, I received assignments to research vendors, compare pricing, and handle logistics. When I suggested budget-friendly alternatives that would achieve the same elegant effect, Dad accused me of trying to sabotage Emma's special day out of jealousy. The truth was, I genuinely wanted Emma to have a beautiful wedding, but watching Dad mortgage the family business to pay for imported flowers and hand-engraved invitations made my business-trained mind cringe. Linda, who married Dad when I was 15, had perfected the art of manipulation disguised as motherly concern. She'd pull me aside with fake sympathy, saying things like, "I worry that your father's disappointment in your choices is affecting your relationship with Emma. Maybe if you showed more enthusiasm for family traditions." Her innocent tone couldn't hide the calculated way she positioned herself as the family peacemaker while subtly reinforcing Dad's narrative that I was the problem. As the wedding approached, my exclusion from meaningful decisions became more pronounced. Bridesmaids' dresses, seating charts, menu selections, everything happened without my input despite my professional expertise in event planning. When Emma's maid of honor dropped out 3 weeks before the wedding, I volunteered to step up. Linda gently suggested that having someone more aligned with Emma's vision would be better, and Dad agreed that Emma's sorority sister Brittany would be a more appropriate choice. The final insult came when I offered to contribute financially to the wedding expenses. I'd saved carefully and wanted to help, especially knowing Dad had taken out a second mortgage on the family business. He rejected my offer with such disdain that Linda had to physically restrain him from saying something truly hurtful. "We don't need charity from someone who abandoned her family," he managed through gritted teeth. That night, I lay awake wondering how trying to build my own life had somehow transformed me into the family villain. The week leading up to Emma's wedding revealed just how far my father's resentment had grown. I arrived at the family home Tuesday morning, expecting to help with final preparations like any loving sister would. Instead, Dad handed me a list of menial tasks while Emma held court with her bridesmaids in the living room, discussing nail appointments and hair trials. My assignments included folding programs, assembling favor bags, and organizing the gift table, essentially the work they'd normally hire someone to handle. Emma's bridesmaids, a collection of her former sorority sisters who still acted like teenagers despite being in their mid-20s, made no effort to hide their amusement at my servant status. Brittany, the replacement maid of honor, actually giggled when she saw me stuffing tulle into favor bags. "Madison, you're so good at this detail work," she said with fake sweetness. "It's like you were born to be behind the scenes." The other girls laughed while Emma pretended to be absorbed in her phone, offering no defense of her own sister. Wednesday evening brought the rehearsal dinner and the formal announcement of seating arrangements. Dad stood at the head of the private dining room at the country club, champagne glass in hand, addressing the wedding party and immediate family. He went through each table, explaining his thoughtful placement of relatives and friends. When he reached my name, his tone shifted noticeably. "Madison has chosen a different path in life, one that's taken her away from family values and traditions. Therefore, she'll be more comfortable sitting with the catering staff at Saturday's reception, where she can observe how professional service is supposed to work." The room fell silent. Even Emma's future mother-in-law looked uncomfortable with Dad's public humiliation of his own daughter. I felt my face burn with embarrassment as 20 pairs of eyes stared at me, some with pity, others with uncomfortable curiosity about what I'd done to deserve such treatment. Emma studied her manicure intensely, refusing to meet my gaze, while Linda nodded approvingly at her husband's practical decision. When I tried to protest privately after dinner, Dad's response was swift and brutal. "You made your choice when you walked away from this family. You can't pick and choose when you want to belong." His voice carried the weight of years of accumulated resentment, as if my career success was somehow a personal attack on his authority. Linda stood beside him, her expression radiating satisfaction masked as concern for family harmony. Thursday's venue walkthrough at Grandview Manor should have filled me with excitement. The restored 19th century estate was absolutely stunning, with crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens. As a hospitality professional, I recognized the exceptional quality of the venue and the skill required to coordinate events of this magnitude. Unfortunately, my professional knowledge was not only unwelcome but actively discouraged. The wedding coordinator, a harried woman named Susan, mistook me for additional hired help when she saw me carrying boxes and following orders. When I politely corrected her, explaining that I was the bride's sister, she looked confused and slightly embarrassed. "Oh, I'm sorry. It's just that usually family members aren't involved in the setup work." Her observation stung because it highlighted how unusual my treatment was, even to industry professionals. Emma's last-minute demands reached ridiculous proportions as Saturday approached. She decided Thursday night that the centerpieces needed to be completely redesigned because she'd seen different ones on Instagram. When the florist explained that the change would cost an additional $3,000 and might not be possible with such short notice, guess who got volunteered to spend Friday calling every florist in the city to make Emma's vision happen? While I scrambled to solve problems that Emma had created, she enjoyed a spa day with her bridesmaids, posting photos of her relaxing bride moments on social media. The financial reality of the wedding was becoming impossible to ignore. During one of my vendor coordination calls, I overheard Dad on the phone with the bank, discussing extension terms for the business loan he'd used to finance Emma's dream wedding. The stress in his voice was evident as he explained cash flow problems and requested additional time to make payments. Part of me felt genuine sympathy for his financial pressure, but another part resented that he'd rather risk the family business than accept my offer to help pay for the wedding. Friday evening's final walkthrough revealed just how spectacular Emma's wedding would be. The manor looked like something from a fairy tale, with thousands of white roses, elegant linens, and ambient lighting that transformed the space into pure magic. As I watched the staff make final adjustments to the reception layout, I couldn't help but notice the designated staff table tucked away in the far corner, partially hidden behind a decorative screen. Tomorrow, that would be my view of my sister's wedding. From the shadows, sitting with people who were being paid to be there while my own family excluded me from their celebration. The contrast between Emma's excitement and my growing dread was stark. She floated through the final preparations in a bubble of happiness, surrounded by friends and family members eager to celebrate her big day. Meanwhile, I tried to process the reality that my own father had intentionally designed the seating arrangement to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. Linda's satisfied smirks whenever she caught my eye made it clear that this punishment had been carefully planned, not a spontaneous decision made in anger. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of perfect weather that wedding planners dream about. Sunshine streamed through the manor's tall windows, creating natural spotlights that would make every photo look magazine-worthy. I arrived at 7 a.m. as instructed, only to discover that Emma and her bridesmaids were already at the salon while I was expected to coordinate with the vendors and handle any last-minute emergencies that arose. The venue coordinator, Susan, seemed relieved to have someone with actual event planning experience on site. Within minutes of my arrival, she was consulting me about everything from timeline adjustments to backup plans for the outdoor ceremony. When the string quartet arrived an hour late due to traffic, I helped them set up efficiently while texting updates to keep everyone informed. When the photographer couldn't find the perfect lighting for pre-ceremony shots, I suggested alternative locations based on my knowledge of the manor's layout. What struck me most was how naturally I fell into the role of problem solver, despite being relegated to guest status rather than family member. Years of managing high-pressure restaurant operations had trained me to think quickly and stay calm under pressure. While Emma's bridesmaids panicked about minor issues like lipstick shade matching, I was coordinating with multiple vendors to ensure everything ran smoothly. The irony wasn't lost on me that Dad had exiled me to the staff area, but I was the one keeping his precious wedding on schedule. The morning's betrayal started small but built steadily throughout the day. When Emma's wedding dress needed emergency alterations because she'd lost weight, Linda called me to handle the seamstress coordination rather than dealing with it herself. When Uncle Robert arrived early and needed directions to the groom's suite, Dad sent me to escort him rather than taking 5 minutes to help his own brother. Every task reinforced the message that I was useful for manual labor but not worthy of participating as an actual family member. During the ceremony rehearsal, my exclusion became visibly obvious to anyone paying attention. The wedding party processed down the aisle in perfect formation while I stood off to the side with the venue staff, watching my sister prepare for the most important day of her life. When the photographer gathered family members for practice shots, Dad actually told him, "Just the immediate family," while looking directly at me. Bradley's family exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly confused about why the bride's sister was being treated like an outsider. The ceremony itself was absolutely beautiful, and despite everything, I felt genuinely happy for Emma as she walked down the aisle. She looked radiant in her designer gown, and Bradley's face lit up with pure joy when he saw her. Their love was real, whatever else was happening with family dynamics, and I wanted their marriage to succeed. From my seat in the very back row, behind distant cousins and family friends, I watched my baby sister become a wife while fighting back tears that had nothing to do with happiness. Dad's pre-reception speech to the assembled guests was when the real betrayal began. Standing at the front of the ballroom with a microphone, he thanked everyone for celebrating Emma's special day and began explaining the seating arrangements. He described the head table, the family tables, and the friends sections with elaborate detail, building up to what he clearly considered the highlight of his organizational skills. "Now, some of you might notice that my older daughter Madison will be sitting with our wonderful catering staff this evening," he announced with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Madison has chosen a career path that's taken her away from family traditions, so I thought she'd be more comfortable observing tonight's service from a professional perspective. Perhaps she'll learn something about real hospitality excellence. The ballroom fell completely silent. 200 guests turned to stare at me, their expressions ranging from shock to pity to uncomfortable embarrassment. I felt my cheeks flame red as whispers started rippling through the crowd. Some people looked genuinely confused about what I could have done to deserve such public humiliation, while others seemed to be enjoying the family drama unfolding before their eyes. Emma's reaction was what hurt most. Instead of defending me or expressing any discomfort with Dad's announcement, she laughed lightly and shrugged as if to say, "What can you do?" Her bridesmaids giggled behind their bouquets, clearly delighted by the entertainment value of my degradation. Linda applauded Dad's speech with enthusiasm, her expression radiating triumph. The walk to the staff table felt like the longest journey of my life. Every step across that elegant ballroom reinforced my exile from the family I'd been born into. The venue staff looked mortified on my behalf, while other guests continued their whispered conversations about the obvious family dysfunction they'd just witnessed. When I finally reached the small round table tucked behind the decorative screen, I felt like I was disappearing from my own family's story. The catering staff welcomed me with genuine kindness that was a stark contrast to my family's treatment. They seemed confused about why I was sitting with them but were too professional to ask direct questions about the obvious family drama. As I took my seat and accepted a glass of water from one of the servers, I realized that these strangers were showing me more consideration and respect than my own father had demonstrated in years. The catering staff at my assigned table turned out to be some of the most interesting people I'd encountered in months. Roberto, the head chef, was a 60-year-old man with gentle eyes and calloused hands that spoke of decades spent perfecting his craft. Maria, one of the senior servers, had been working events at Grandview Manor for over 10 years and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of wedding disasters and family drama. James, the sommelier, was surprisingly well educated and spoke passionately about wine pairings with the kind of expertise that comes from genuine love of the craft. Within 15 minutes of sitting down, I felt more comfortable and accepted than I had at any family gathering in recent memory. When Roberto noticed my obvious discomfort about the seating situation, he gently asked if I was all right without prying into the family dynamics that had landed me at their table. Maria offered practical wisdom about difficult relatives, sharing stories from other weddings where family politics had created similar awkward situations. "Honey, I've seen every kind of family drama you can imagine," Maria said while adjusting the silverware placement with practiced efficiency. "Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most are the ones who hurt you deepest. But that says more about them than it does about you." Her words carried the weight of someone who'd witnessed countless family celebrations that revealed more dysfunction than harmony. As the evening progressed, I found myself sharing more about my professional background than I'd intended. When James mentioned the challenges of managing wine inventory for large events, I described the systems I'd implemented at the Meridian Hotel that had reduced waste by 30% while improving customer satisfaction scores. Roberto's eyes lit up when I explained cost control strategies that maintained quality while improving profit margins. You really know what you're talking about, Roberto said with genuine respect. Most people think restaurant management is just about taking orders and smiling at customers. They don't understand the complexity of operations, logistics, staffing, inventory control. His appreciation for my expertise felt like cool water after years of Dad's dismissive attitude toward my career achievements. The staff table also provided a unique vantage point for observing the wedding reception dynamics. From our position near the service area, we could see behind-the-scenes interactions that other guests missed completely. Dad's treatment of the venue staff was consistently condescending, speaking to servers as if they were invisible and making unreasonable demands with the entitled attitude of someone who believed paying for a service meant owning the people providing it. Emma's bridesmaids were even worse, treating the staff like personal servants and making messes they expected others to clean up immediately. Brittany spilled red wine on the white tablecloth and simply walked away without acknowledging the server who had to deal with the stain. When Maria approached their table to refill water glasses, the girls continued their conversation as if she didn't exist, discussing their post-wedding plans to hit the downtown clubs. Linda's behavior toward the staff revealed her true character in ways that her carefully constructed family persona usually concealed. She snapped her fingers at servers to get their attention, criticized food presentation that was actually flawless, and made pointed comments about knowing how to manage people properly that were clearly intended for my benefit. Watching her interact with workers she considered beneath her social status showed me exactly what kind of person my stepmother really was. The contrast between my family's behavior and their public image was stark. While Dad gave speeches about values and traditions, he was simultaneously demonstrating complete lack of respect for the working people who were making Emma's dream wedding possible. The hypocrisy was so obvious from the staff perspective that I felt embarrassed on behalf of my family name. About halfway through dinner service, Roberto casually mentioned something that caught my attention completely. The owner specifically asked about tonight's event, he said while watching the servers navigate the complicated table arrangements. Mrs. Castellano doesn't usually pay attention to individual weddings, but she mentioned wanting to know how things went with the Henderson reception. Why would the owner care about this particular wedding? I asked, genuinely confused. The manor hosted dozens of events every month, and most owners would delegate operational oversight to their management teams. Roberto's expression became slightly mysterious as he exchanged glances with Maria and James. Mrs. Castellano has been asking about you specifically, Maria said carefully. She knows your reputation in the industry, Madison. Apparently, your work at the Meridian has gotten attention at levels you might not realize. The revelation that Grandview Manor's owner knew who I was felt surreal, especially considering my current position at the staff table. The mystery deepened when James mentioned that Mrs. Castellano was expected to make an appearance during the reception, which was apparently unusual for private events. She usually only shows up for corporate functions or charity galas, he explained. But she specifically requested notification when the Henderson wedding was happening. As this information sank in, I began to feel a strange mixture of curiosity and apprehension. While my family had relegated me to obscurity at the staff table, apparently my professional reputation had reached the owner of one of the region's most prestigious event venues. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so painful. Dad had positioned me among the workers as a form of humiliation, not realizing that I'd earned enough respect in the hospitality industry to attract attention from successful business owners. The staff table conversation was interrupted periodically by guests approaching to express confusion or sympathy about my seating arrangement. Some family friends looked genuinely puzzled about why I wasn't sitting with relatives, while others offered awkward condolences as if someone had died. Each interaction reinforced how unusual and inappropriate Dad's decision appeared to people outside our immediate family dysfunction. The elegant woman who approached our table during the main course service commanded attention without saying a word. She moved through the ballroom with the confident grace of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room, her silver hair perfectly styled and her navy blue dress clearly designer quality. The catering staff immediately stood when they saw her, their posture shifting to respectful attention. "Mrs. Castellano," Roberto said warmly, his voice carrying genuine affection rather than merely professional courtesy. "What a pleasure to see you tonight. How are you enjoying your evening?" His tone suggested a relationship built over years of mutual respect, not just the typical employer-employee dynamic. Sophia Castellano's smile was warm and genuine as she greeted each staff member by name, asking about their families and remembering personal details that revealed her investment in the people who worked for her. When her gaze settled on me, her expression shifted to something between curiosity and satisfaction, as if she'd been looking forward to this moment. "You must be Madison," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I've been hoping to meet you for quite some time. Your reputation in our industry precedes you, and I have to say, your innovative work at the Meridian has impressed a lot of people, myself included." Her words hit me like a physical force, partially because of their unexpected nature and partially because they represented the professional recognition I'd never received from my own family. Before I could respond adequately to her introduction, Dad appeared at the table with his most charming smile, the same expression he used when trying to secure construction contracts from potential clients. His sudden transformation from family dictator to smooth businessman would have been amusing if it weren't so transparently calculated. "Mrs. Castellano, what an honor," Dad said, extending his hand with practiced enthusiasm. "Harold Henderson, Emma's father. Thank you so much for hosting our family's celebration in your beautiful establishment. Everything has been absolutely perfect." His voice carried the slightly desperate edge of someone trying to make a crucial first impression. Sophia's response to Dad was polite but notably cooler than her greeting to the staff or me. She accepted his handshake briefly before turning her attention back to our conversation, making it clear that he was interrupting rather than joining a welcome discussion. "Mr. Henderson," she acknowledged with professional courtesy that lacked any warmth. "I was just telling Madison how impressed I am with her work," Sophia continued, her voice carrying enough volume to be heard by nearby tables. "The cost reduction strategies she implemented at the Meridian without sacrificing quality are exactly the kind of innovative thinking our industry needs. The 30% increase in profit margins while improving customer satisfaction scores is remarkable achievement." Dad's smile faltered slightly as he processed this information about my professional success that he'd never bothered to learn. His eyes darted between Sophia and me, clearly trying to recalculate his understanding of my career status. The fact that someone of Sophia Castellano's obvious importance knew specific details about my work achievements seemed to catch him completely off guard. "Madison has always been very focused on her career," Dad managed, his tone suggesting that career focus was somehow a character flaw rather than an admirable trait. "Though we've always encouraged her to remember that family comes first." His attempt to position himself as a supportive father fell flat given that I was currently sitting at the staff table by his explicit design. Sophia's expression became noticeably cooler as she took in Dad's comment and the obvious implications of my seating arrangement. As a successful business owner, she clearly understood workplace dynamics and the significance of where people were positioned at formal events. The fact that the bride's sister was sitting with the hired staff rather than at a family table would not escape her attention. Emma's approach to the table interrupted the conversation, her wedding dress rustling as she moved with the careful steps of someone wearing an elaborate gown and high heels. Her smile was radiant but became slightly forced when she realized she was interrupting a business conversation rather than the family chat she'd expected to find. "Madison, I was wondering where you'd gotten to," Emma said with false brightness. "I hope you're enjoying your dinner back here." Her words carried a subtle emphasis that made it clear she was performing for Mrs. Castellano rather than expressing genuine concern for my well-being. Sophia's response to Emma was polite but brief, the kind of professional courtesy she would show to any bride celebrating at her venue. "Congratulations on your wedding, Mrs. Whitmore. I hope your celebration has met all your expectations." Her tone was pleasant but clearly indicated that she had no particular interest in extending the conversation with the bride. The growing audience around our table was beginning to attract attention from other wedding guests, who noticed that someone important was having an extended conversation at the staff table rather than mingling with the family and friends at the main reception. Whispered discussions started at nearby tables as people tried to figure out who the elegant woman was and why she seemed more interested in talking to the bride's sister than to the bride herself. Bradley appeared next to Emma, his expression curious but respectful as he took in the scene. Unlike his new wife and father-in-law, Bradley seemed genuinely interested in understanding who Mrs. Castellano was and why she was showing such obvious interest in his sister-in-law's professional achievements. His family background had taught him to recognize successful business people, and Sophia's presence commanded the respect of someone with real power and influence. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced," Sophia said to Dad with a slight edge to her voice. "I understand you own a construction company, Mr. Henderson. Tell me, how do you feel about your daughter's success in the hospitality industry?" Her question seemed innocent enough, but there was a subtle challenge in her tone that suggested she was testing Dad's response to my achievements. Dad's discomfort became increasingly visible as Sophia continued to praise my professional accomplishments with specific details that demonstrated genuine knowledge of my work. When she mentioned the Regional Hospitality Excellence Award I'd received the previous year, his eyes widened with surprise that quickly shifted to embarrassment. He'd never asked about my career achievements, so learning about industry recognition from a stranger at Emma's wedding clearly caught him off guard. "The award was well-deserved," Sophia continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone whose opinion mattered in business circles. "Madison's approach to staff retention and customer satisfaction has become a case study at several hotel management programs. She's exactly the kind of innovative leader our industry needs to stay competitive." The revelation that my work had become educational material at business schools seemed to physically impact Dad, who swayed slightly as he processed information that contradicted everything he believed about my career trajectory. His construction business operated in traditional ways that had worked for decades, but apparently my methods were being taught to future hospitality managers as examples of excellence. "I actually have a proposition for you, Madison," Sophia said, her tone shifting to the confident directness of a successful executive making an important offer. "I've been looking for someone to serve as regional director for our hotel and restaurant operations. The position would oversee 15 properties across 3 states, with full authority over operational strategies and staff development." The salary figure she mentioned made Dad's face go pale. The annual compensation was more than his construction company's gross revenue in profitable years, and significantly more than he'd ever imagined I could earn in hospitality management. Emma's expression shifted from polite interest to shock as she realized that her supposedly unsuccessful older sister was being offered a position that would make her wealthy by any reasonable standard. Roberto, Maria, and James exchanged knowing smiles as they watched the family dynamics shift in real time. They'd clearly anticipated this moment and were enjoying seeing justice served to someone who'd been treated unfairly by her own relatives. Their loyalty to Mrs. Castellano was obvious, but they also seemed genuinely pleased to witness recognition being given to someone who deserved it. Dad's desperate attempt to insert himself into the conversation became almost painful to watch. "Madison's always been ambitious," he said with forced enthusiasm. "Though we've encouraged her to consider returning to the family business where she could really make an impact." His suggestion that my current career was somehow a stepping stone to joining his struggling construction company revealed how completely he'd misunderstood my professional status. "I don't believe Madison needs to step down from her current level of success," Sophia replied with barely concealed disdain for Dad's suggestion. The Meridian's profit margins improved dramatically under her management, and several competing hotels have tried to recruit her with substantial offers. "She's building an impressive reputation that would be wasted in." She paused meaningfully, "other industries." Bradley's family approached the table at that moment, drawn by the obvious importance of the conversation taking place at what should have been the least significant seating area. Bradley's father, Robert Whitmore, was a successful real estate developer who immediately recognized Sophia Castellano's name and reputation. His expression shifted to impressed surprise when he realized that his new daughter-in-law's sister was the focus of such high-level business attention. "Mrs. Castellano, what a pleasure," Robert said with genuine respect. "I had no idea you'd be attending tonight's celebration. Your reputation in the hospitality industry is legendary." His acknowledgement of Sophia's status made Dad's earlier casual greeting seem even more inappropriate and ignorant. The conversation that followed revealed layers of business connections and industry relationships that Dad had never imagined existed. Sophia and Robert discussed mutual acquaintances and shared experiences in high-level business circles, while Dad stood on the sidelines trying to follow conversations that were far above his social and professional level. Emma's attempts to redirect attention back to her wedding were becoming increasingly desperate and unsuccessful. Every time she tried to interject with comments about the reception or her dress, the adults continued their business discussion as if she hadn't spoken. Her bridesmaids, sensing that the power dynamic had shifted in ways they didn't understand, retreated to their original table to continue drinking and gossiping. Linda's approach to the group carried her usual air of entitled interference, but her confidence wavered when she encountered Sophia's cool professionalism and obvious authority. Her attempts to position herself as an important family spokesperson fell flat when Sophia responded to her comments with polite disinterest rather than the deference Linda expected from service industry people. "Mrs. Henderson, isn't it?" Sophia said when Linda tried to monopolize her attention. "How lovely that you're able to enjoy such a beautiful wedding celebration. I hope the evening meets all your expectations." The dismissive politeness in her tone made it clear that Linda's social climbing attempts were transparent and unwelcome. The growing crowd around our table was creating a reception within the reception, as more guests migrated toward the obvious center of power and influence. Dad's carefully planned seating arrangement was backfiring spectacularly as the staff table became the most interesting and important location in the ballroom. When Uncle Robert approached to pay his respects to Mrs. Castellano, whom he recognized from newspaper business sections, Dad's humiliation reached new levels. His own brother was showing more sophisticated understanding of business hierarchies and social protocols than Dad had demonstrated all evening. The contrast highlighted how Dad's limited worldview had prevented him from recognizing success that didn't fit his narrow definitions. "Madison, I had no idea you'd achieved such remarkable success," Uncle Robert said warmly. "Your father should be incredibly proud of your accomplishments." His genuine praise created an awkward silence as everyone present realized that Dad's pride in my achievements was notably absent from the evening's conversations. Sophia's casual inquiry about Dad's construction business seemed innocuous at first, but her knowledge of industry gossip quickly revealed that Henderson and Sons' financial struggles were more widely known than Dad had realized. When she mentioned the Patterson contract that had fallen through 6 months earlier, Dad's confident demeanor crumbled as he understood that his business troubles were public knowledge among successful business owners. "The construction industry has been challenging lately," Sophia observed with apparent sympathy. "Supply chain issues, labor shortages, increased material costs. It's difficult for smaller companies to maintain profit margins when everything seems designed to squeeze independent operators." Her understanding of construction industry pressures demonstrated the broad business knowledge that comes with managing multiple enterprises across different sectors. Dad's attempts to downplay the severity of his financial situation became increasingly transparent as Sophia continued to demonstrate detailed knowledge of local business conditions. She knew about permit delays on his recent projects, the insurance claim disputes that had tied up cash flow, and even the bank's growing concerns about loan covenant compliance. Her information wasn't malicious or gossipy. It was the kind of comprehensive market awareness that serious business leaders maintained about their operating environment. "Actually, your timing might be quite fortunate," Sophia continued, her tone shifting to the calculated interest of someone considering a business opportunity. I'm planning a new hotel and conference center development about 30 miles north of here, and I'll need a reliable construction partner for the project. The magnitude of the opportunity she was describing made Dad's eyes widen with desperate hope. The project specifications she outlined represented exactly the kind of large-scale commercial work that could save Henderson and Sons from bankruptcy. The timeline spanned 18 months, the budget exceeded anything Dad's company had ever handled, and the prestige of association with Castellano Hospitality Group could open doors to additional projects that would secure the business for years. The contract value would be substantial, Sophia said, allowing the implications to sink in. Enough to stabilize any cash flow challenges and provide a foundation for future growth. However, I only work with contractors whose values align with my company's culture. I believe strongly in businesses where family members support each other's success rather than competing for limited recognition. Dad's growing excitement about the business opportunity was visibly warring with his growing understanding of how his treatment of me appeared to a successful businesswoman. Sophia's emphasis on family support was clearly a direct reference to the obvious dysfunction she was witnessing, but Dad seemed unable to connect his behavior toward me with her stated values requirements. Emma's panic was becoming more obvious as she realized that her wedding reception was transforming into a business negotiation that could dramatically impact her family's financial future. Her attempts to redirect conversation back to celebration topics were increasingly desperate and unsuccessful, particularly as more guests gathered around our table to witness the unfolding drama. Bradley's family was watching the situation with uncomfortable fascination, clearly recognizing that they were witnessing significant family dysfunction that would impact their new relatives for years to come. Robert Whitmore's business experience allowed him to understand the financial implications of both Sophia's job offer to me and her potential construction contract with Dad. Family loyalty is incredibly important in business relationships, Sophia continued, her gaze moving meaningfully between Dad and me. I need to know that my partners understand the value of supporting talented family members rather than undermining their achievements. Madison's success reflects positively on everyone who supported her journey. The irony of the situation was becoming painful for everyone except Sophia, who seemed to be enjoying the educational opportunity she was providing about business ethics and family dynamics. Dad had spent years criticizing my career choices and excluding me from family recognition, only to discover that my professional reputation could potentially save his failing business. Linda's attempts to salvage the situation by claiming credit for my upbringing and success were met with Sophia's politely skeptical responses. When Linda suggested that she'd always encouraged my career ambitions, Sophia's raised eyebrow indicated that my current seating arrangement at the staff table contradicted any claims of family support. It's fascinating how family dynamics reveal themselves at celebrations, Sophia observed with apparent innocence. Wedding receptions often show us exactly how much families value each member's contributions. The seating arrangements alone can tell you everything you need to know about relationships and priorities. Dad's realization that his public humiliation of me was being interpreted as a character test by a potential business partner created visible panic. His construction company's survival might literally depend on convincing Sophia that he possessed the family values she required, but his behavior toward me throughout the wedding had demonstrated exactly the opposite. The growing crowd of wedding guests around our table was creating an audience for Dad's uncomfortable reckoning with the consequences of his choices. Relatives and family friends who had witnessed his treatment of me were now seeing that treatment evaluated by a successful business owner whose opinion could determine our family's financial future. Uncle Robert's pointed questions about my career achievements were highlighting how little Dad actually knew about my professional success, creating an uncomfortable contrast with Sophia's detailed knowledge of my work. The gap in family support was becoming impossible to ignore or excuse as mere misunderstanding. The moment of truth arrived when Sophia posed a direct question that would force me to choose between protecting my family's reputation and telling the truth about years of mistreatment. Her businesslike tone carried no emotion, but the weight of her question settled over our group like a heavy blanket that made breathing difficult. Madison, I'm curious about your experience with family support during your career development, she said carefully. Have you felt encouraged and valued by your relatives as you've built your professional reputation? The question seemed simple, but everyone present understood that my answer would determine whether Dad received the construction contract that could save his business. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Dad's desperate eyes pleaded with me to lie, to minimize years of criticism and exclusion for the sake of family financial survival. Emma looked genuinely frightened for the first time all evening, finally understanding that her perfect wedding celebration might be remembered as the night her family's dysfunction cost them everything. Instead of immediate response, I took a moment to look around the table at the faces surrounding me. Roberto, Maria, and James watched with supportive expressions, having witnessed enough family drama to understand the difficulty of my position. Bradley's family maintained carefully neutral expressions, but their business experience allowed them to recognize the significance of what was happening. The truth is complicated, I began slowly, choosing my words carefully but committed to honesty regardless of consequences. For the past several years, I've offered financial support for family expenses that was rejected. I've shared professional achievements that were dismissed as unimportant. I've suggested business strategies for the family company that were ignored. Tonight, I offered to contribute to Emma's wedding costs and was told that my money wasn't wanted. Dad's face went white as I continued speaking, each word destroying his carefully constructed narrative about family relationships and his own supportive parenting. Emma's expression shifted from panic to something resembling shame as she realized that her sister was publicly recounting years of mistreatment that she'd witnessed and allowed. I was told that my career choices had taken me away from family values, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each sentence. I was informed that I would be more comfortable sitting with the catering staff because I'd chosen a different path. When I graduated with honors from business school, my family missed the ceremony. When I received industry recognition for my work, no one attended the awards ceremony. Sophia's expression remained professionally neutral, but her slight nod indicated that my honesty was providing exactly the character assessment she'd been seeking. The growing audience of wedding guests was hearing details about family dynamics that many had suspected but never witnessed so explicitly. The irony, I said, feeling a strange sense of liberation in finally speaking truth, is that I genuinely wanted to support my family's success. I offered business advice based on my education and experience. I offered financial assistance when I learned about cash flow problems. I even offered to contribute to tonight's celebration because I wanted Emma to have a beautiful wedding. Linda's attempts to interrupt and provide alternative explanations were met with increasingly skeptical looks from the sophisticated business people present. Her claims that family dynamics were being misunderstood rang hollow when contrasted with my detailed recounting of specific incidents and conversations. Emma's bridesmaid friends, who had been enjoying the entertainment value of family drama, were beginning to look uncomfortable as they realized they were witnessing something more serious than typical wedding stress. Their whispered conversations had shifted from amusement to genuine concern about the family dysfunction being revealed. Bradley stepped closer to Emma, his expression troubled as he processed information about his new in-laws that cast their family in a very different light than he'd understood during the engagement period. His parents exchanged meaningful glances that suggested they were reconsidering their assessment of the Henderson family's character and values. Dad's desperate attempts to provide damage control only made the situation worse. His stammering explanations about misunderstandings and different perspectives sounded increasingly hollow when contrasted with my calm recitation of facts. His claim that he'd always been proud of my achievements was contradicted by every guest's observation of my current seating arrangement. What's most painful, I said, feeling tears threaten but maintaining my composure, is that I've spent years hoping that my success would eventually earn family recognition and inclusion. Instead, I've learned that professional achievement means nothing if your own relatives are determined to see failure. Sophia's slight smile indicated approval of my honesty, even as Dad's panic reached new levels. Her assessment of his character and family values was clearly negative, and his chances of securing the construction contract were evaporating with each word I spoke. The confrontation reached its climax when Dad's desperation led him to make a crucial mistake. "Madison, you're ruining everything," he hissed, momentarily forgetting that we had an audience of important business people and wedding guests. "This is your sister's wedding day, and you're destroying it with your selfishness." His accusation that I was being selfish by honestly answering questions about family support demonstrated exactly the character flaws that Sophia had been evaluating. The fact that he blamed me for creating problems rather than acknowledging his own behavior revealed the narcissistic patterns that had defined our family dynamics for years. "Mr. Henderson," Sophia said with cold finality, "I believe I've learned everything I need to know about your family values and business philosophy. Unfortunately, they don't align with the standards I require from business partners." 3 months after Emma's wedding, I sat in my new corner office overlooking downtown Denver, watching the morning sun cast long shadows across the city I'd never expected to call home. Accepting Sophia's position as regional director had required relocating halfway across the country, but the physical distance from my family had proven therapeutic in ways I hadn't anticipated. The expansive view from the 15th floor of Castellano Hospitality Group's headquarters served as a daily reminder of how dramatically my perspective had changed since that humiliating evening at the staff table. The transition to my new role had been surprisingly smooth, largely because Sophia's reputation in the industry opened doors that would have remained closed to someone with my limited executive experience. Within weeks of starting, I was invited to speak at hospitality conferences about innovative cost reduction strategies and staff retention programs. The professional recognition that my father had dismissed as meaningless was now providing opportunities to shape industry standards across multiple states. My therapy sessions with Dr. Patricia Hernandez had become a crucial part of processing years of emotional manipulation and systematic devaluation. Learning to identify narcissistic behavior patterns helped me understand that my father's treatment wasn't a reflection of my worth but rather a manifestation of his own insecurities and control issues. The revelation that his criticism had been designed to keep me dependent rather than help me improve was both painful and liberating. Family dysfunction often intensifies when one member breaks free from established patterns, Dr. Hernandez had explained during one of our early sessions. Your professional success threatened the narrative your father had created about your capabilities and his own importance. Rather than celebrating your achievements, he doubled down on criticism to maintain his position as the family authority figure. The contact with Emma had dwindled to occasional text messages that felt more obligatory than genuine. Our relationship had been permanently altered by her unwillingness to defend me during Dad's public humiliation, and her subsequent attempts to minimize what had happened revealed how deeply she'd internalized the family's dysfunctional dynamics. Her marriage to Bradley appeared stable, but friends reported that his family maintained polite but distant relationships with the Henderson side. Dad's construction business had indeed failed within 6 months of the wedding, exactly as Sophia's withdrawal of the potential contract had predicted. His pride prevented him from asking for my help even as bankruptcy proceedings began, and Linda's departure when the financial situation became hopeless surprised no one who understood her opportunistic nature. The house I'd grown up in was sold to satisfy creditor claims, and Dad moved to a small apartment across town. Uncle Robert had reached out shortly after the business collapse, expressing regret for not recognizing the family dysfunction sooner and apologizing for years of remaining silent about Dad's treatment of me. Through him, I learned about other family members who had been similarly excluded over the years for various perceived slights against Dad's authority. The pattern of isolation and punishment was revealed as a decades-long strategy for maintaining control rather than the isolated incidents I'd believed them to be. My romantic relationship with Marcus Chen, a fellow hotel executive I'd met at an industry conference, was developing into something beautiful and healthy that served as a stark contrast to the conditional love I'd experienced in my family. Marcus celebrated my professional achievements without feeling threatened, supported my career ambitions without expecting anything in return, and demonstrated the kind of partnership that was possible when two people genuinely respected each other. The difference is that Marcus sees your success as adding value to the relationship rather than taking something away from him, Dr. Hernandez had observed. Healthy relationships create mutual support systems where both people can thrive without competition or resentment. The promotion I'd received after 8 months in the regional director position had come with additional responsibilities and a salary increase that would have seemed impossible just a year earlier. Sophia's mentorship had accelerated my career development in ways that formal education never could, and her network of successful business contacts had opened opportunities across multiple industries. Professional recognition continued to accumulate in ways that validated my decision to prioritize career development over family approval. The Innovation in Hospitality Leadership Award from the National Restaurant Association had been particularly meaningful because the nomination came from industry peers who recognized my contributions to operational excellence and staff development programs. The moments of sadness about family estrangement still occurred, particularly during holidays or major life events when the absence of supportive relatives felt most acute. However, these feelings were increasingly balanced by appreciation for the freedom to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than biological obligation. My chosen family now included colleagues like Sophia who valued my contributions, friends like Roberto and Maria who had shown me kindness during my darkest moment, and a romantic partner who celebrated my achievements without reservation. The contrast with my biological family's conditional love was so stark that I wondered how I'd tolerated years of criticism and exclusion. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most are simply incapable of providing healthy support, Dr. Hernandez had said during one of our sessions. Recognizing that limitation isn't giving up on family, it's choosing to protect your mental health and seek the relationships you actually deserve. The final lesson I'd learned was perhaps the most important, that self-worth couldn't be determined by family approval or disapproval. The professional success I'd achieved, the healthy relationships I'd built, and the personal growth I'd experienced were all evidence of my actual value, regardless of whether my father chose to recognize it. Looking back on that humiliating evening at Emma's wedding, I realized that being forced to sit with the catering staff had inadvertently placed me exactly where I needed to be. The staff table that was meant to diminish my importance had instead connected me with people who recognized my worth and introduced me to opportunities that transformed my entire life trajectory. The irony wasn't lost on me that Dad's attempt to teach me a lesson about knowing my place had ultimately helped me discover that my place was far higher than he'd ever imagined possible. His public humiliation had backfired spectacularly, revealing his character flaws to everyone present while highlighting my professional achievements to people who could actually appreciate them. As I prepared for another day of challenging and meaningful work, I felt grateful for the painful wake-up call that had forced me to choose between family loyalty and personal integrity. The decision to prioritize truth over temporary peace had been difficult, but it had led to genuine happiness and success that no amount of family drama could diminish. The staff table at Emma's wedding had taught me that sometimes the people who should support you won't, but that doesn't diminish your worth or limit your potential. Real family isn't determined by blood relationships but by the people who choose to celebrate your success, support your dreams, and value your presence in their lives. And sometimes, the most important lesson you can learn is that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's essential for building the life you actually deserve. Have you ever experienced family members who couldn't celebrate your success? How did you handle the tension between family loyalty and personal integrity? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life family drama stories. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by family approval, and remember that sometimes the people who are supposed to support you most might be the ones holding you back from your true potential. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that your value doesn't depend on others' ability to recognize it.